You want to be in the video? Is that it? Is it? You too, Cisco? No. Hello there. Welcome back to the fantasy world of Audra B. Wilson. Today I'm going to be talking about superheroes because I'm American. We just got off of our 4th of July weekend, and I wanted to talk about something that was fantasy, but really started as an American fantasy, which led me to superheroes. Superheroes are a unique fantasy subgenre that started in 1902 with the publication of Hugo Hercules in the Chicago Tribune. It didn't have a very long runtime, but it really sparked the first superheroes to ever be published. They started being published not only in newspapers, but in magazines and in all sorts of different other medias, until finally we get to the 1940s, when it really started to just boom. Just started to be created out of nothing, and everything was fair game. Everything was fair game. No, I don't need that part. I already have that part. But before we get into the 1940s and the actual topic of today's video, my top 10 male and female superheroes. But first, let's talk about the origins of superheroes. Superheroes have their origins in the mythology of ancient times. Pretty much any mythology you can think of, they basically have their origins there, because those heroes usually had something divine to intervene. Now, the superheroes from the 1900s that we are most familiar with, not all of them have their origins. There are several other heroes that don't have their origins directly from mythology. But the superhuman abilities are definitely part of the heroic traditions that I personally can base back into Greek mythology with Hercules, Achilles, Theseus, and plenty of other Greek heroes. That's not to say they don't have any origins elsewhere. That's just where I see them coming from. So today I'm going to talk about my top 10 male and top 10 female superheroes. So let's start with the male ones. Number 10, Clark Kent from Smallville. Now, you may be wondering why I didn't put just Superman on here. Well, there's a lot of reasons, mostly because I'm actually not a big fan of just Superman. A lot of times I find that Superman just kind of falls into some Boy Scouty mix of something that I just don't really care for. Yes, he's strong, he has all these different abilities, but he also lacks a flexibility I feel like you need if you're going to be a superhero. And a lot of times that lack of flexibility either leads him to being too much of a good guy where he has absolutely no flaws, or he ends up turning evil, like in Justice, or in one of my favorite shows, Justice League Unlimited, there's an evil Superman. It's kind of crazy. So I like Clark Kent from Smallville specifically because you really see him as an actual person, as someone who grows and learns just as much as everybody else. You see his flaws. You see him learn how to handle his abilities. You see him take advantage of his abilities in everyday life. And it isn't until later that he learns the right thing to do. You see him learn right from wrong. And also, that version of Superman isn't all about, well, just doing the right thing. It's about him becoming Superman. And I find that story a lot more compelling than just him being this pinnacle of a man that is completely overrated, in my opinion. If you love Superman, all power to you. Leave a comment below to tell me your favorite version of Superman or why you think I'm wrong. I'm perfectly okay with that. Number 9, Wolverine. Now, I like Wolverine in a lot of different versions, but specifically in the animated versions, I feel like he is very, very interesting. But I gotta say, I love Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. I think that he pulls off the attitude so, so well. I think that he's funny. I love a funny, gruff character. I love a character who is being completely serious, but he's just so funny in his delivery. And in the serious parts, you definitely feel the seriousness of the situation. But there's definitely just a funniness to the way he is so gruff and stoic and hot-headed, and then all of a sudden you have this moment where he's like the sweetest person in the world, or he's trying not to be sweet, but he really is. Number 8, Nightcrawler. Now, Nightcrawler is kind of an oddball on this list. Normally I don't like the just sweet and innocent hero. I feel like that's very unrelatable and unlikable. Not that being a good person is unlikable or anything, that's not what I mean. But just as a hero, I usually like to see a lot of flaws, and for Nightcrawler, every version I've seen of him, he is very, very innocent and sweet, and there's something really amazing about watching him. He is able to move his body in such strange ways, but that's because of the way he's built. He's able to teleport. He has a lot of really cool abilities, but his flaws actually do come out as some of the most endearing things. Number 7, Batman. Now, some might think that Batman deserves to be higher on this list. There's a reason he's number 7. First and foremost, he is not exactly the best, shall we say, caretaker of children. I mean, Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Tim Drake, and even his own son, Damian Wayne, have all become Robin, or a form of Robin. And Dick Grayson and him have a falling out. They do get back together like a few times as far as like being buddy-buddy and stuff, but there's your first one. Jason Todd dies. He gets brought back and then is crazy and turns into Red Hood, but he dies. Number 3, Tim Drake. They don't exactly have a falling out, but there's a lot of rocky roads when it comes to Tim Drake. And then, okay, Damian's not entirely his fault. I can give him a little bit of pass on that because of Talia. I mean, he does have a tragic backstory, and that does shape him a lot, but that's also a big flaw of his, too. Now, he does make up for this, even with the 4 kids that become Robin, by doing everything he can so that these kids don't become like him, because they all have tragic backstories of some kind. But the reason I love him is more so because of his abilities. He's extremely intelligent, he's a detective, and he does do everything he can to keep his city safe. Number 6, Aquaman. My first introduction to Aquaman was in the Justice League Unlimited verse. Oh man, that was a really great show. I loved that show as a kid. Anyway, so I liked Aquaman in that show because he was very gruff and actually very intimidating. If you look at everything that he was in the show, he was very intimidating. And the only thing he ever did was he wanted Atlantis to be okay. That was his goal. Yes, I do love Jason Momoa as an actor. I've seen him in several things and I've loved his acting. I just think that he was the perfect choice for Aquaman because of his ability to bring humor in. Every other version of Arthur, I feel like if they're trying to be funny, it's either corny or weird, or he's just too stoic. And both of those versions have already been done. So I just love those two versions of Aquaman. I can pretty much take or leave any other Aquaman. If you have a version of Aquaman that's really cool and you want to share that with me, definitely leave that in the comments. I would love to see more of a cool Aquaman instead of the corny Aquaman. So definitely leave some of that in the comments below. Number 5, The Flash. Again, my first introduction to The Flash was JLU. Surprise, surprise. That version is actually Wally West as The Flash. He was just very comedic, and I think that's actually why they went with Wally instead of Barry for JLU, because they needed that comic relief. But he definitely has some very serious sides to him too. I really love The Flash in pretty much every version I've seen him. So apparently this didn't record when I was recording originally, so here it goes. Number 4, Green Lantern, John Stewart. Now, the reason I love this version of Green Lantern is because I think he is more interesting. He was a Marine before he joined the Justice League. He kind of fell into the same role as Hal Jordan when Hal Jordan was kind of, gone for a long time. The reason I like him is because he's not really funny, particularly in the JLU show. He's also a very good mentor, especially to characters like Static Shock, and actually he appears in the Static Shock show when it was going on at the same time. And so you get to see his interaction with Virgil. And, he was just a great character. I loved watching him on screen. One of my favorite episodes was when they got turned into children, and I do think his love triangle in the show was kind of annoying at times. I'll go into that a little bit later with one of the characters on the female list, but yeah, he is a really cool character in general, and honestly, I'd like to see more of him than any of the other Green Lanterns, but John Stewart I would love to see more of, and so that's why he's number 6 on this list. Number 3, Captain America. Now, this is another character that I actually love multiple versions of him, but the most prominent in my mind is the MCU. I love how he starts off so Boy Scouty and just wanting to do the right thing, wanting to serve his country. And then he gets sent to the modern world and he is completely lost. And he's trying to hold on to the past a little bit, but at the same time he knows he can't. I don't particularly like the ending to his character in Endgame. But I don't have a problem with him passing the mantle to Falcon. I love his character in general, so it was perfectly fine for me for all of that to happen. I love him in the MCU, so if there is any more of him, I'd love to see it, but if there's not, I'm perfectly okay with that as well. He is a very interesting character to me, and partially because He starts off so innocent, and he kind of still has that innocence even throughout the whole time. He basically still just does everything he can to do the right thing, and I appreciate that. I appreciate someone wholesome that goes through trials and tribulations and still comes out on top. Number 2, Thor. I love Thor, and part of it is because of the Norse mythology connection. Even though I know that the Marvel version of Norse mythology and actual Norse mythology is completely different, I still love the connection to it, and it's still really funny the way that Thor is presented, especially in the MCU. He is very noble in a lot of different versions. He's also kind of out of his league, especially when it comes to Loki, and yet he still comes out on top, and it's funny to watch at times. I particularly love him in the MCU because of just all his growth and experiences. For some honorable mentions, Static Shock, Green Arrow, Gambit, Beast Boy, Martian Manhunter, and Cyborg. I love all of these characters, and it was very, very hard to come up with my top 10 for the male side. So without further ado, I'm going to go on to my number 1 pick, Robin. Now, again, this is one of those characters where I love so many versions of him. I'm mostly going to be talking about Teen Titans and Young Justice for this one. And I'm specifically talking about Dick Grayson. Now, the reason I love Dick Grayson so much is partly because of Batman. The reason he took him in was so that he wouldn't become what Bruce became. That's one of the reasons why Bruce was in the top 10. I think that Dick Grayson is just a more noble superhero than Bruce. And one of the reasons why I love him so much is because he is not superpowered. In a world full of tons of other superpowered heroes and even the villains he goes up against being so superpowered, him being non-superpowered and still able to completely defeat his villains is just amazing, and I feel like that gains him more respect. It gains more respect for Batman too, but seeing as how I've already ranked him, I love Robin. So next up is my top 10 ladies. For this list, I will warn you, my number 1 and 2 are pretty much on the same level for me. I cannot choose between them. The only reason I put them in 1 and 2 is because I didn't want to have an 11th one, and they are 2 different characters, so I had to put them in some order, but really number 1 and 2 are equally loved. Number 10, Huntress. This Huntress is from the Birds of Prey TV show. It was on in the early 2000s, I believe. I won't say it's the best superhero show out there, but I really love this particular character. Huntress in this show is very independent. She is kind of independent to a fault. She's extremely stubborn and doesn't want to team up with anybody. By the end of the show, she has grown a lot. There was actually way more that could have been done for the show as far as character development. But it is a really great show, minus some of the early CGI stuff. It's kind of funny in those ways. Number 9, Jean Grey. She is often portrayed as very shy and not in control of her power. At first, she doesn't know how to control it, and it takes a long time for her to be able to control her powers really well. And that's in every version I've seen of her. I love her in X-Men Evolution, as a student, and I also love her in the X-Men animated series. Those two are my favorite versions of her. I haven't really gotten into the newer X-Men movies. I didn't see Dark Phoenix. Let me know in the comments whether I should. If you think that that version of Jean Grey is good. Number 8, Starfire. Now, the specific Starfire I'm talking about is the Teen Titans Starfire. She's the first one I came into contact with. A lot of characters don't like getting her upset because she's very sensitive, doesn't understand Earth customs. And I love that she's just that sweet, innocent person who can still kick your butt at the same time. She is a very wonderful character, and even the villains don't like getting her upset, really, which is actually kind of funny, particularly the ones like, I don't remember his name. He's a couch potato. That's all I know. Number 7, Black Widow. Apparently I love a lot of redheads on this list. Didn't realize that when I was making it. Really, the MCUs, when I first saw Black Widow, I wasn't really into the Avengers before that. But no, I actually can't wait for the Black Widow solo movie. After I first saw her in, I believe it was Iron Man 2, wasn't it? I wanted to see more of her. I just love everything about Black Widow. She's extremely awesome, and yeah, just Black Widow. I cannot say even more about her. I love her. Number 6, Wonder Woman. This is another one of those characters where I love multiple versions of her. I love her from the TV show back in the 70s. I love the JLU. And then, of course, I love the new Wonder Woman movie with Gal Gadot. She did a great job with that character, and I love it. Number 5, Vixen. When I was first introduced to her on JLU, I was kind of disappointed. She was kind of presented as a foil to Hawkgirl and Jon Stewart. Honestly, that was kind of annoying. But eventually, I really started to like her. I loved seeing her personality come out, finally. I really enjoyed that she was able to hold her own, and even though she wasn't the strongest powers-wise, she was still a very strong female character who she could take things, and I really enjoyed that about her. I feel like she's kind of an underused hero. I'd love to see her being more of a main character as opposed to a secondary character. She was in the show Legends of Tomorrow on the CW. Unfortunately, she wasn't part of it for long. I kind of wish she had stayed on the team. That would have been really interesting and fun. But I understand why they didn't do that, because she was already a part of the team. But honestly, CW, come out with a thing with that team, because that would be really cool. Kind of set back in time. That would be really cool. I think you should do that. Please do. Please do that. Number 4, Black Canary. She has one superpower, and that is the Canary Cry. Love the Canary Cry, but she makes up for that being her only thing by being a master martial artist. In the JLU version, she was an apprentice of Wildcat, who was an older superhero. My favorite version of Black Canary is probably the JLU version. She was in Smallville. Of course, she was in Arrow as well. And then I also love in Young Justice how she is basically one of the main mentors of the Young Justice team. She is even kind of acting as a psychiatrist when they get stuck in McGann's world and they have to deal with the trauma of that. I love many versions of her, mostly the JLU and the Young Justice versions. I feel like she's at her best in those. Number 3, Storm. She is always in control of her emotions because that's how her powers get unleashed. She is a really great mentor for all the X-Men and students at school. And I love her powers. Being able to control the weather would be amazing. And now for some honorable mentions. In no particular order, Bumblebee, Hawkgirl, Katana, Scarlet Witch, and Gamora. So now on to my top two. Again, I can't really choose between these two characters, but just because I need to have a top 10 and I didn't want a top 11, here goes. Number 2, Raven. Raven is one of those characters that I loved from day one. She was always so mysterious and everything at first, when I first saw her in Teen Titans, and then as the story progressed, I grew to love her even more. And as the time goes on, you really see her just come into her own and become more confident. She's really cool. I love her character. And then finally, number 1, Artemis. Now, this Artemis is the one from Young Justice. There is another previous iteration in the comics as her as Tigress, which they do kind of play off of that in the Young Justice show in season 2. But they both have fathers who are villains and try to recruit them into their villainy. They both are misunderstood by their friends and then gain confidence later. And they have a series of mistrust, and they both eventually overcome it. And of course, until you don't see her until the 5th episode of the series. And so I'm wondering, who is this chick? I see her in the intro, but she's not there yet. So there was a bit of mystery leading up to her, and then when you finally got to her, it was just, oh my god, just everything was so great with her. I love the banter between her and Wally. I love that Dick Grayson knew who she was pretty much from the beginning, even though nobody told him. And she's just awesome. Again, I can't really choose between her and Raven. They're both very interesting characters, and they go in different directions. I connect with them on certain levels. Both of them eventually gain confidence in themselves, and I kind of have that feeling for myself. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Please leave a comment, like, subscribe, and check out my blog at audravwilson.com. Again, I'm still searching for beta readers, so if you would like to become a beta reader for Unveiling the Facade, link in the description below. Have a great day. Today we're going to be talking about superheroes, and I think I